I was in the kitchen cutting apples for my son, Ethan, when I heard his voice at the door. "Mom, come meet my new friend." I smiled, wiping my hands on my jeans. "Bring him in, love." Ethan ran in, dragging a tall man by the hand. The man was my age, maybe early 40s, dressed in a neat coat. He had a smile that felt wrong in my home. "Mom, this is Mr. David," Ethan said proudly. "He said I can call him Dad too." My hand dropped the knife. The blade clicked in the sink. For a second I did not breathe. David looked at me like he owned the room. "It's good to finally meet you, Lydia," he said, saying my name like he already knew me. Ethan laughed and hugged his drawing. "See, Mom. Now I have two dads." My chest felt cold. I laughed a small, shaky sound and forced my face to be calm. Later that night my husband, Mark, came home and kissed me on the cheek. He did not say anything about the man. He watched Ethan reading and his face was smooth. I tried to ask him but he only said, "Don't worry. It's nothing." Could not sleep. I kept thinking of the way David looked at me, like a secret waiting to be opened. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my folktale story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. The next morning I tried to act normal, but my stomach twisted. I asked Mark about David over coffee. He stirred his cup slowly. "He's from Ethan's new school club," he said. "Just a helper." The word helper sounded small and false. The way Mark said it made my heart beat faster. I watched him. He kept looking at his phone and smiling, then deleting something. When I picked Ethan up from school that day, I saw David talking to the teacher. He laughed too easily and kept touching his phone. When he saw me, he nodded like we had a secret handshake. "Morning," he said. I tried to smile back. That night Mark came home late. He kissed me quickly and went to his study. He shut his door. I heard his phone buzz. He left the phone face down. I could have left it alone, but I touched it with my thumb as if a small ring told me to. There were messages, short ones, then gone. He had deleted many. When I asked him about the messages, he said, "Work things. Don't pry," and his voice sounded like a lock. I felt trapped. The next time David visited, Ethan called him Dad again, and David winked at me like he was part of a plan. I started to follow Mark one afternoon. He said he had a meeting at the office. I waited in my car across the street. He walked into a small cafe and sat with David. They spoke in low voices, looking at each other like old friends. I watched through the window. David reached out and touched Mark's hand. Mark smiled and squeezed back. They laughed about something, then Mark looked up, saw me and froze. He did not step out. He made a face I did not like. After that I could not pretend. I asked Mark to talk in the living room while Ethan was at a friend's house. The lamp threw soft light on his tired face. "Who is he?" I asked. "And why does my son call him Dad?" Mark looked down, then away. "You don't need to know everything," he said. "He helps at the school. He's a friend." His voice was flat. I pressed harder. He breathed hard and finally said, "He's someone from my past." The words fell like stones. "We had history," he admitted. "It doesn't matter now." My hand shook. "History," said. "You mean you hid him from me? You let him meet my son and call himself Dad without telling me?" Mark's eyes were empty. "It's complicated." I left the room and sat on the stairs. For the first time I felt the home I had built wobble like glass. That night Ethan came running to me with a drawing. It was us, me, him, and a tall man with a big smile. Above the man he had written Dad. His letters were bright. He did not understand the storm in my heart. "Isn't he nice, Mom?" Ethan said. "He plays with me." I hugged him tight, tasting salt on his cheek. My mind kept replaying Mark and David in the cafe. Mark had called David history, but the way he had looked at the man said more. I waited until Ethan was asleep and then stood in the doorway of Mark's study. He was on the phone, voice low and sharp. "He's too close," he said. I told him no more. "Leave it." He sounded like a man at war. I wanted to knock the door down. The phone call ended. Mark looked at me like a man caught in a trap. "I should have told you," he said quietly. "I didn't want to lose everything." I pressed my hands to my mouth. "Lose everything? You have already left me everything to lose." The words came out with fire. He looked at me with tired eyes. "I never wanted to hurt you. I thought I could handle it." I walked away and slept on the couch. I decided then I would not be silent. If this was betrayal, I would answer with truth. The next day I went to the school and asked to speak with the principal. I said I wanted to know more about David. The principal was polite but nervous. "He volunteers sometimes," she said. "He helps boys with projects." Her voice was small. I showed her a photo of David. She hesitated, then nodded. "There was a file. He registered as a guardian for a family last month." My heart dropped. Who had he registered for? I asked to see the papers. She said she could not share, but she would call the family. I waited outside, my fingers like ice. When the woman came out, I saw a tired face. An aunt perhaps, and a small boy peeking from behind her skirt. The woman held the little boy's hand and smiled sadly. "He's been kind to us," she said. "Helped us with money sometimes." That night I confronted Mark with the new news. He did not deny it. He admitted he had given money and allowed David to be close to Ethan. "He wanted to know his son," Mark said. "I thought it would be harmless." "You let my son call another man dad," I said, voice breaking. "You let him do that as if I don't matter." Mark looked so small then, like a man without armor. "I thought I was helping," he whispered. "I thought I was making amends." My anger rose like a wave. He had been hiding the truth and deciding for me. I would not be happy or gentle. I would not let him decide my son's heart. I could not stand waiting. I needed proof and I needed allies. I called my sister Mara and told her everything. She arrived the same afternoon, eyes sharp like before. "We will not let him walk over you," she said. Her voice steadied me. Mara and I began quietly. She watched Ethan on weekends, asked gentle questions, and listened to the boy talk about Dad David. Ethan said David took him to the park and bought him sweets. He said David told him stories about a man who loved him. My heart cracked a little more each time he spoke. I also started to follow David. He met strange men in dark corners of town. He handed envelopes sometimes. He laughed too loud with a man named Tom who ran the mechanic shop. One night, I saw David slip into a motel with a woman I did not know. My stomach twisted. I told Mara about Tom and the envelopes. She said, "We must find out if he is paid to come near Ethan, or if he claims a right." We found out David had registered as a guardian for a different family at the school. We learned he had a record of lying to get money. Mara taped a few conversations when David bragged about getting close to children to feel like a father. His words were cold. That night, I felt the first sparks of a plan. If he wanted to play father, I would show him the cost. I would not break. I would make him pay for stealing my trust. I spoke to the school counselor and asked for support. She was gentle and sad. "If you want to stop him visiting, we can withdraw his guardian status," she said. "But we must be careful, he might fight it." Mara and I sat for hours writing down everything. We wrote the truth, and then we wrote what we would do if the truth did not stop them. We were not proud of the plan, but betrayal makes people do hard things. I started leaving small notes for David. Nothing harsh, just messages that showed I knew. He smiled the first time and left candy for Ethan. The second note was colder. He came to the house and asked to speak to Mark. I said I was busy. He tried to charm me with false calm. I pretended to be foolish and kind. While he spoke, Mara recorded him saying he wanted a family back. He said he wanted Ethan to call him Dad to feel whole. I kept the recording. Sounded like victory, but it felt hollow. My plan had to force truth into daylight. I could not let him whisper into my son's head. One evening Mark came to me, voice low. If you push him away, he might cause trouble for Ethan. You think I do not think of Ethan? Snap. I put him above everything. That is why I will not allow a stranger to teach him lies. Mark looked away. For the first time I saw him afraid of my strength. The next move was public. I asked the counselor to meet with the school board. I brought the recording and all the notes. The room smelled of old coffee and paper. When I played David's voice out loud, faces turned. People who had nodded at David now stared. The principal looked upset. They voted to remove David's guardian status until the matter was investigated. David protested loudly at first, but the law was clear. He left the room with his jaw tight. I felt no joy then, only a steady pulse of relief. Ethan would be safe in school. But David did not stop. He came to our street one afternoon and waited near the gate. He watched Ethan play and then walked up and waved. I stood on the porch and watched him. He called, "Hey, buddy." Ethan ran to him without fear. David lifted him up and kissed his head. I felt rage burst like heat in my chest. I walked outside, voice steady. "You will not touch my son again." He let Ethan down and laughed. "You should learn to share, Lydia." I did not say more. I walked away with Ethan's hand in mine. But under my skin the plan grew teeth. If he wanted to push, I would make sure his lies cost him everything he thought he could buy. I turned to the one place I had hidden strength, my work. I ran a small bakery, and many people visited daily. I asked my best friend, Tommy, who managed deliveries, to watch David. Tommy was furious for me and began to follow David when he left the street. One night, Tommy found David meeting men exchanging envelopes. He took photos. They looked bad. David with cash, papers, secret smiles. We printed the photos and took them to the lawyer my sister knew. The lawyer was kind but blunt. "You can file a claim to protect your son," she said. "But you will need more. Proof that he planned to influence the child or that he used money to get close." Mara handed over the recorded bragging. Tommy handed the photos. I added the notes David left and the dates he visited the motel. The lawyer put them in a file and said quietly, "He will try to make you look like the liar. Be ready." That night, David left a note under our door, simple words. "I can be a good man. Let me in." He wanted sympathy. He wanted to flip the story. I smiled without teeth. The next morning, I posted one of Tommy's photos in a private group of parents with a caption that asked if anyone else had concerns. Messages poured in. 2 other mothers wrote about odd payments. The web closed faster than I expected. My plan was working. The town shifted. Neighbors who once waved began to call. Some wanted to help. Others wanted gossip. David started to lose his charm. He walked the street with a shorter step, like a man carrying a secret sack. He came to the bakery and tried to buy sweets for Ethan. I refused him with a polite smile that cut. Then one night, David came to our house, angry and loud. He pounded on the door. Mark opened it and tried to calm him. "You can't take this," David shouted. "I have a right," he pointed at Ethan. "He is my blood." Mark's face changed. I saw the color drain. David looked at him with hate splashed across his face. "You lied to me," David spat. "You kept him. You left me with nothing." Mark stepped back silent. The truth came out like a gas. David's voice was full of blame and fire. In that moment I saw why he was bitter. He had wounds that cut deep. But wounds do not give a man the right to break my home. That night I closed the door and locked it tight. My plan had dug a pit. I had to be ready for whatever came next. The lawyer moved faster than I thought she would. She filed for a protection order and a formal complaint. The court gave a date. I felt strange, like I was walking on thin glass. Ethan didn't know the papers were being signed. He still laughed and drew pictures of us. I wanted to keep his world pure. When the judge read the order, David's face turned hard. He tried to shout, but the judge warned him. The order said he could not contact Ethan or come near our home or school. He left with his jaw tight. I felt relief for a week. Then David started to use other ways. He sent gifts with notes, called the delivery drivers, and left messages on social sites. I reported each one. The lawyer kept a pile of evidence growing like a tower. People in town began to look at him like he was dangerous. Mark watched me through all of this. First he said little. Later he would say, "I'm sorry," and I would nod like I heard a stranger. But when he tried to help, he mostly shrank back. I could see fear in his eyes. Fear of losing everything or being judged. I hated that. Mara and Tommy kept me steady. They came to the hearings and sat with me. Tommy would squeeze my hand and whisper, "We are with you." That made me brave. I was not alone. I had allies, proof, and the law. My plan was working, but David kept pushing. I needed a final move. One morning, a woman I had never met came to the bakery. She sat down and cried into her hands. When she calmed, she said, "My name is Anna. David used me too." Her voice shook with shame. She told me how he had pretended to love her, then taken money and left. The pattern was clear. I told Anna about the recordings and photos. She agreed to testify. Her story added pain to my pile of proof. More women came forward. Small towns hold secrets, and once one voice speaks, others follow. My evidence became stronger. The town started to change. Then, to my shock, Mark came to me and said he wanted to leave. "This house is not healthy," he said. "I can't be the man I pretended to be." My heart felt like glass cracking. "So you will walk away?" "Yes." He looked tired. "I need time." I felt betrayed twice. First by his lies, then by his choice to step back. But I would not beg him. I had a plan that did not need his strength. I needed clarity and justice. If he left, I would carry on and raise Ethan alone. I would teach him who his real family was. That night I sat with Ethan and read his favorite book. He asked why I smiled when I read. I hugged him and said, "Because there are brave people in the world." I meant it for both of us. The court day came, and the room filled with faces. David sat with his new lawyer, looking colder than before. Anna took the stand first. Her voice was small but steady. She told the judge how David lied and used people for gain. The judge listened and wrote notes. When it was my turn, my hands shook, but my voice did not. I told the truth. How he came to my house, how he taught my child to call him dad, the messages, the photos, and the recordings. I looked at David and saw no shame, only anger. I told the judge I feared for my son's safety and his mind. The judge read the papers, then the evidence. He took a long breath and said the protection order would be extended. David was to stay away and see no contact. He would be fined if he broke it. The judge also warned him about criminal charges for fraud if the other complaints proved true. David stormed out, slamming the door. Outside he yelled. He said he would fight me and ruin me. People in the street watched him like he was a storm. I felt something shift hard inside me. I was tired of being afraid. It was time for my last move. That night, I sat with Mara and Tommy in the back room. We made a list. Every place David had left a mark. The motel names, the men he met, the accounts, the favors he promised. My plan was quiet and sharp. It would not hurt my son. It would hit David where he lived. His false life. At dawn, I met with the lawyer and asked for a subpoena for David's accounts and business papers. The lawyer agreed. We also asked the police to check the motel ledgers and get statements from the men in the photos. The net was closing. I did not tell Mark. He called, asked how I was, and I kept my answers small. I needed to work alone now. I was not cruel, I was focused. Revenge was not about hate. It was about truth and stopping a man who used children's trust as a game. Over the next week, evidence came in. The motel receipts matched the dates of David's visits. Men confirmed he had paid them to look after him sometimes. The accountant, found in a dusty office, showed payments to David's shell accounts. The files made a map of his lies. I held each paper like a piece of a puzzle. When it was complete, I felt a cold satisfaction. One evening I arranged a meeting I said was for community safety. The school hall filled with parents and neighbors. I asked the principal to open the meeting. My voice was calm. I told them the truth. I played the recordings. I showed the photos and receipts. People watched and gasped. David sat at the back, his face white. He tried to stand and speak, but mouths whispered and hands pointed. I watched him crumble. I had not wanted this. Public shaming is hard, but he had made the choice to use children and money. He had to face the light. After the meeting, the police stepped in with the files. They took David away for questioning. He looked at me as they let him out, full of hate. My heart beat hard but steady. Did not feel like triumph. Felt like release. That night, Ethan hugged me and said, "You made him go away, Mom." I kissed his hair and whispered, "Yes, baby. I kept you safe." The revenge had been delivered, not with violence, but with truth and law. I had fought and won his right to be a child without lies. Weeks passed, and silence finally filled the house. No knocks at the door, no strange calls, no letters with hidden meanings. I could hear myself think again. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. Ethan started to laugh again, a real laugh. Not the kind he used when he tried to keep peace between adults. The bakery, which had once been my distraction, now became my power. People came not just for the bread but to see me. Some called me the brave mother. I didn't feel brave. I felt rebuilt. I had survived betrayal, manipulation, and shame, and I had turned them into strength. One morning, a woman from the local paper came. She said, "Your story is inspiring. Can I write about it?" I hesitated, but then thought of other women still trapped in lies. Said yes. The article ran 2 days later. Mother fights back against deception and wins. Messages poured in. Mothers, wives, even daughters, saying they saw themselves in me. I realized my revenge had become something deeper. It wasn't about hurting David anymore. It was about showing others they could rise too. But not everyone was happy about the story. Mark showed up at my door one night. His face pale under the porch light. "You made everything public," he said. "Do you know how this makes me look?" I stood firm. "Like a man who abandoned his family when it got hard," I said. He flinched. For a moment, guilt flickered across his face, but then he masked it with anger. "You humiliated me." "No, Mark," I said softly. "You did that when you stopped standing beside me." He looked away, muttering something about reputation and neighbors. I realized then, Mark's pride mattered more to him than his truth. He left again, slamming the door behind him. This time I didn't cry. Felt nothing. The storm inside me had already passed. Ethan started asking questions. "Mom, was Dad bad?" That word bad hurt to hear. How do you tell a child that adults make mistakes that scar everyone? I knelt beside him. "No, sweetheart," I said. "He made bad choices. But you're not part of that." He nodded, looking thoughtful. "Then I'll make good choices." I hugged him hard, hiding my tears in his hair. That night, I promised myself something. Ethan would grow up knowing love that didn't twist or pretend. I would raise him to see strength not as shouting, but as truth. The next day I took him to a park. He ran, laughing, sunlight catching his blonde hair. Took a photo. In that photo, his joy looked real again. That was my true victory. Months later, I got a letter from the court. David had been sentenced to 6 years for fraud and falsifying financial documents. He had tried to plead insanity, but the evidence was too clear. The victim's statements, including mine, had sealed his fate. I sat at the kitchen table, staring at the letter. Then I smiled, not because he was in prison but because justice had finally caught up. The web he spun had closed around him. That night, I took out the last recording I had of him, the one I'd never played aloud. "Press play." His voice filled the room. "You'll never escape me, Grace. I'll always be part of you." I listened once, then deleted it. The sound vanished into digital dust. "Not anymore," I whispered. A year passed. The house looked brighter. Ethan had grown taller. His laughter filled every corner. The bakery expanded. I hired 2 more helpers and painted the walls soft yellow. One day I got a letter in the mail. It was from Mark. No return address. Just words written carefully. "I'm sorry. You were stronger than I ever was. I see that now. I hope you and Ethan are happy. Please forgive me." I folded the letter and set it in a box with old photos, a box of things that no longer held pain. As the sun set that evening, Ethan sat on the porch steps, holding a paper plane. "Mom," he said, "can I throw it?" "Go ahead," I smiled. He threw it, and it soared far into the pink sky. Watching it, I realized revenge wasn't just about making others pay. It was about reclaiming what they tried to steal. Your peace, your worth, your voice. And I had taken all of it back. One morning as I opened the bakery, I saw a familiar figure outside. Mark stood by the window, hands in his pockets, hair streaked with gray. He looked older, smaller somehow. My heart didn't race like before, it stayed steady. I walked out to him. "Grace," he said quietly, "I've been thinking a lot." "I got your letter," I replied. He nodded, eyes down. "I didn't deserve your forgiveness, but I wanted to see you. I heard about David, about how you handled everything. You were incredible." His words didn't sting anymore. They sounded like closure. "You chose him," I said. "You broke what we had. But I'm done hating you." He blinked, surprised. "You don't hate me." "No," I said softly. "I pitied you. But now, I've moved on." He smiled faintly. "You always were stronger than me." As he walked away, I realized the weight that had followed me for years finally lifted. Revenge wasn't burning anymore, it was cold, clean peace. After Mark left, I drove to the cemetery. My mother's grave sat under a large oak tree. She had died before all this began, but I always imagined her voice guiding me through the chaos. I knelt down, brushing leaves off the headstone. "Mom," I whispered, "I did it. I didn't let them break me." The wind rustled softly, almost like an answer. When I stood up, I noticed a small family nearby. A little boy ran to his mother, laughing. The woman caught him and kissed his forehead. It was such a simple thing, but I smiled through tears. That used to be me and Ethan. And it still was. I drove home feeling light for the first time in years. I'd buried the past, but I carried its lessons. That night, Ethan climbed into my bed, holding his favorite toy. "Mom," he whispered, "I had a dream." Dad said sorry. I smiled gently. "Dreams can heal the heart," I said. He looked thoughtful. "Do you think people can change?" Pause. "Maybe. But not everyone chooses to." He nodded, eyes heavy with sleep. "You changed, Mom. You got stronger." I watched him drift off, his chest rising and falling softly. The boy who once brought home a stranger and called him Dad was now learning what truth looked like. That, to me, was the sweetest revenge of all, raising him into a man who would never repeat those mistakes. Months later, I got invited to speak at a women's conference. They wanted me to share my story. How betrayal turned into power. I stood on stage, lights bright, the audience silent. "I lost everything once," I began. "My marriage, my peace, my trust. But pain is not the end. It's a beginning if you let it teach you." Faces in the crowd softened. Some women cried. "When someone betrays you," I said, "don't waste your life wishing for their downfall. Build something so beautiful that they can never touch it again." When the applause came, it felt like thunder, and for the first time I didn't hide from it. Years later, Ethan was grown, strong and kind. He graduated college and opened his own charity, helping families who'd lost everything to fraud. One evening, as we stood outside watching the sunset, he said, "Mom, you know what I learned from you?" Smiled. "What's that?" "That revenge isn't about hurting back. It's about living so well that those who hurt you become irrelevant." Tears welled in my eyes. I pulled him into a hug. The world had taken much from me once, but it had given me back something far greater: strength, peace, and a son who understood the meaning of both. If you're watching this video, please like, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments where you're watching my story from. I want to know how far it has traveled. The story you have just heard is one of pain, courage, and healing. I'm telling it to remind you that even when betrayal breaks you, you can rebuild into something stronger. If you were Grace, would you seek revenge? Or would you rise above it? Tell me what you would do, because every story is a mirror for someone else's heart. God bless you, and may strength guide your choices. On the final screen, you'll find one of the channel's most powerful stories. Stay and watch. It just might change how you see forgiveness.